Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Cheap or Steep, and today I want to talk about a Nintendo Switch game, but I think it's one of the best games you could ever buy for the price. Now, if you're like me, you grew up going to your local GameStop or whatever it may be, and pretty much just picking up a game that looked interesting to you. You had no idea if this game was a well-beloved game or if it was complete garbage because you're not in online spaces or around the discourse of what is good and what's bad. I didn't know that when I picked up Jimmy Johnson's Anything with an Engine Racing, whether or not that was going to be a really good game or really bad game. The box art and the visuals of that box really had to sell me as a kid, and this game coming up absolutely sold me on that. This game is called Madshot. The price and the image that it showed instantly sold me. I didn't care what the game is, unless it was a dating simulator or something stupid. All I saw was a dude with a squid mask, twin pistols, and a sick looking suit looking up at a castle with Cthulhu in the background, and that instantly sold me. I love the archetype of characters like this, such as Van Helsing or Doomslayer, where they're just a normal dude with guns and they have to take on hordes of monsters. But of course, gameplay does matter, so what do you actually do in this game? Well, this is an action roguelike where you run across a 2D plane and take out hordes of monsters until you reach the end of the floor to get to a boss battle. You do this 6 times and then you get to the final boss with Cthulhu himself to win the game. It's really fun, and even though I've beaten it a couple times, I still play it all the time because of how different every run can be. The best way to describe it is what I would like to say 2D Doom would be like. I'll start by talking about the hub world, which you immediately start the game in. You're dropped into the manor of Madshot himself. The character technically doesn't have a name, so I just call him Madshot anyways. It sounds awesome either way. Inside the manor, you can do a couple of things. You can change your outfit, change your weapon, pick a different super move, and even augment your gear. These costumes don't really do anything too different, they're really just for fun. I think a couple of them will give you different effects when the enemy dies, but it's nothing crazy. The super move is really important though. The first one allows you to slow down time. This allows you to hit tons of enemies really quickly without being hit much. The next one allows you to fly for a few seconds and gain health from enemies that you kill. This can be very helpful, but oftentimes it doesn't last long enough to make any substantial difference. The next one allows you to slow down time and throw explosives. But this is not as good because oftentimes when you're deep into a run, your own weapons will do more damage than these sticky bombs. The next one is garbage, where it just turns enemies into platforms for like 2 seconds and just freezes them in place. This could be helpful in clutch situations when you only need to kill 1 or 2 more enemies, but typically I don't use it. However, I discovered a final upgrade that completely breaks the game. When you use your ultimate with this ability, you can summon a bunch of bats to help you on the battlefield. These bats will fly around the screen and destroy anything it touches. They are incredibly helpful, and you can respawn 5 more every time you use your ultimate. There is a limit of 5, however. I actually just discovered this when I was playing for footage. I realized I had never used this one before and I wanted to get footage of it, and it turned out to be amazing. But of course, like every other roguelike, your character is only as good as his main weapon. So let's go over each of them and see what they do. The first is the one that is shown on the cover, that being his twin pistols. These are the first weapons you get in the game, and they are pretty solid. They shoot out rounds that do decent damage to enemies around you and gives you some good range. Nothing crazy, especially compared to some of the others, but it's a solid choice to start the game with. The next is the sword, and I think this might be one of the best ones you can get, especially when you upgrade it. You can get upgrades for your entire character, like increased attack speed and stuff like that, for getting achievements, but I find that upgrading this augmentation is the best. When fully upgraded, this augmentation that you are given to your entire character lets your third slash of your sword have a 70% chance to do critical damage. This paired with increased attack range really makes your sword extremely powerful. On top of that, you can get other abilities during your run, such as the ability to increase your attack rate more, pass through walls, and probably the best ability, adding an air blast to your sword slashes looks awesome. When these abilities are combined, you feel unstoppable. And that's how you should feel in roguelikes, in my opinion. I think that the sword is the best when you have all these abilities, does not mean that the others are bad. Next we have the machine guns, and these are the ones I would consider to be the second best. They allow you to shoot 20 rounds extremely quickly and covers a large chunk of the screen. They don't have a ton of damage starting out, but over time, they can be a lot better. There's one upgrade I like for this weapon in particular, where every kill of an enemy increases your round count from the counter by 1. So if it's a large body of enemies, you can go from like 20 rounds per reload to 30. Next is the shotgun. This one fires a massive shot and will kill almost every enemy in the first biome or two in one shot. Over time, as you increase the attack rate and general damage, this weapon could become extremely powerful. I will say its biggest downside is that you can only fire 3 bullets at a time before you have to reload. It's not a massive issue, but it can be annoying. Finally, you have the shield, and this is probably the most difficult weapon to use, but it can be very satisfying. When you use the shield, you can throw it out and it'll stay in midair and spin like a buzzsaw. Before you press the attack button again, it will pull it back to you. It's like Captain America's shield and Kung Lao's hat put together. They can also block projectiles when you're facing that direction, although this is rarely helpful. It can become really powerful when you throw it out, run to the other side of the screen, wait for enemies to get close to you, then pull it back and just shred like 10 in a row. I don't think that the shield is one of the strongest weapons, but I would definitely say it's very fun to use when you get the hang of it. I think it is the worst, however, with bosses. It's much better in groups of enemies because you can hit very many at a time. Overall, I think it's a pretty good selection with what I have been given. I do wish they had a Warhammer just because that would be pretty cool. Otherwise, I think the selection is solid. I still think my favorite is the sword, but they're all fun to use. Now for the verse of the day. Romans 4 verses 7 and 8 say, "Blessed are those whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord will never count against them." I also want to mention that you can have many different secondary weapons that you can gain throughout the journey. Now, I'm going to save you some time here and tell you that the Buster Sword, the Lightning Sword, and the Shotgun are easily the best weapons to get. Some of the other ones can be good, but these are easily the best. The Lightning Sword can be good when you attack multiple enemies, especially when you have charge stacks applied to your primary weapon, which adds electricity to enemies. The Buster Sword is great for doing big damage with close-up enemies, especially to bosses. And the Shotgun does a lot of damage to faraway enemies. You can only pick one at a time per run, however, and you do not get a choice of which weapon to start the run with. You have to choose to encounter it in a series of different maps. I also wanted to mention that the skill tree has a lot of upgrades that you become extremely powerful with. When playing the game, you can talk to your butler and he will give you a goal to achieve during your run. Once you finish that achievement, you are given a new augmentation for your character that you could equip at any time. These are things like increased attack rate, rerolls on abilities, and things like that. Once you've gotten them all maxed out, your skill tree can allow you to apply 6 of these at a time, and you are extremely powerful. I want to talk about the different encounters throughout the game as well. The first is the scrolls, and these are easily the best in the game. After each fight, it will give you a new augmentation to your weapon or to the character himself. It can be many different things like increased attack power, attack rate, more ammo, orbiting ice shards, which is one of the coolest. They get extremely creative in this portion of the game. I don't like roguelikes where you have a choice of like 5 increased speed or 5 increased powers or something like that. I just find it to be very repetitive. I love how much each power in this game gives you a massive impact on how you play your route and how much more powerful you feel with the character, even if it's just visually. If you get ice powers, your sword slashes will turn blue. Or if you get curse stacks, which means that you do more damage to the enemies over time, it will turn red. And you can even mix these colors over time so it looks even better. Next are these triangle looking things, and these give you upgrades to the powers that you've already been given throughout the map. And it allows you to do things like increase 1 stack of curse to 2 stacks of curse per attack. I'd say these are the second most helpful, but oftentimes it's still better to get a new power-up entirely. There are not a ton of these types of upgrades that's going to impact you too drastically. I already mentioned these weapon caches, and these are obviously really good as well. Then you have the coin ones, and they allow you to gain coins at the end of the fight that can be used in different encounters where you can shop for items. These can be extremely helpful through your gameplay. You also have these little star marks, and these can be a number of different events where you choose to a risk versus reward thing. Sometimes you gain health, but you lose coins, or gain a shop item, but you lose health or things like that. Some rare ones will allow you to skip everything else in level and reach the boss of that biome extremely quickly. I don't recommend this usually, but if you are feeling powerful enough and maybe low on health or something like that, it could be worth it. Next you have these capsule looking encounters, and these give you 25 additional max health per encounter. It will also heal some of your health if you're not already maxed out. I would say these are like the third most helpful ones, and if you feel good enough with your skills and don't think you need too many scrolls, you could definitely go out of your way to get a ton of these. I think in one playthrough I maxed out on 350 health, where you typically start with 100 with maxed out augmentations before you start the fight. They also have these purple looking things that look like they came from Mario Party 4. These allow you to buy upgrades to your skill tree. I'll say eventually you'll get to the point with these that will be completely useless and you're not really needed. I've maxed out a skill tree for a while, and ever since then I've had like 10,000 of these. I definitely would not recommend going out of your way to collect them. However, I will say every time you replace the item in your skill tree with a different one, you do have to max it out again. It's very annoying, but like I said, eventually you have more than enough of these purple orbs that it was not really important. Finally, we have the mini boss encounters as portrayed by this fish looking dude. After completing these mini bosses, you're given 2 random items. These could be 2 scrolls, 2 coins, or it could be a coin and a capsule. It could be anything. I wish they would tell you ahead of time what it is, but that's alright. Overall, you have a very good variety of choices to make when it comes to which encounters you choose. I really like how you can do that, and sometimes even chain together several different ones like pins or the shop, and if you want to, you can do very minimal actual fights if you're just trying to get to the boss. After every biome, you come to a boss battle, and these boss battles, along with the mini ones, are extremely fun. I love the character designs in this game, not only on the main character, but on all the little monsters as well. I also like that they're not super simple bosses like a Mario boss or something. They're not too difficult like Cuphead bosses or anything, but once you upgrade your abilities, but before your skill tree is enhanced, every one of them feels impossible. That's the fun of these types of games. The more you play, the better you get at it as a player, but also as the character grows. Eventually, once you learn the patterns of the villains and things like that, you get better at the game and you upgrade your character so you can finish off the bad guys quicker. In the first room of bosses, you have a 50-50 shot of either getting an old man alchemist type of guy who shoots a shotgun at you and summons gooey ghosts or whatever those are, or a giant slime monster. I would definitely say that the slime monster is the easiest out of the two because he cannot move. Alchemist Man can teleport all over the stage, and they do give you these red barrels in the area for this one, but they do damage to you as well if you're in the radius. The sludge monster is just a lot easier to deal with. Next is the giant worm. I'd say this is definitely one of the harder ones. He's very large and very fast, and even touching him will do a ton of damage. However, once you learn its patterns, it's not too bad. Next is this giant pterodactyl bug hybrid. This one's kind of difficult, but the body and his head have different hitboxes. So sometimes if you use weapons like the sword, you could damage him twice for every hit. On top of that, his head is a weak spot, and sometimes you can use a shotgun and shoot him in the head, and it does like 400 damage, which is a lot. Because of how quickly the shotgun reloads, this is usually very helpful. Next is the Brood Mother, and this one is actually fairly easy. All you have to do is hover in this goop type thing that allows you to infinitely fly and attack her brain. It's the weak spot like the head of the pterodactyl, and using the same tactic, it could take her down very easily. On top of that, for whatever reason, This enemy spawns way more white orbs, which are used to fuel your ultimate moves more than any boss. So it's very easy to reload that ability. But I think on this boss specifically, your increased attack rate when slowing down time would easily be the most helpful. Next is the Oculus, and it's a giant squid monster with one eye. This is probably the easiest fight in the game for a boss, because all you have to do is hit the eye that's right above you and stand directly underneath it and dodge 2 laser attacks. It gets a little more difficult when you have to jump up on the tentacles and kill all the other little eyes shooting lasers, but it's still not that bad. On top of that, you're very deep into your run at this point, so you're very upgraded with all your weapons. Plus, the bats that you spawn will never die because the attack that the giant eyeball throws out cannot reach them. The eye always shoots down at you, so it's not going to hit the bats that are much higher above it. So you never have to respawn them. Next is the most unique boss with this tunnel monster. It chases you through the hallways like Poppy Playtime or something, and shoots out tentacles and spawns other enemies. And you have to attack it very quickly. There are certain abilities such as the Buster Sword that allow you to deal damage very quickly, but this is definitely the boss that is the hardest without good upgrades. If you're expecting to have this run go very deep into this playthrough, I would plan around having good weapons and upgrades to deal with this boss ahead of time. Finally, we get to Cthulhu himself, and this is by far the hardest boss in the game. First off, the bats are useless until the second half of the fight. There's a giant eyeball slit in the middle of the screen that shoots lasers in quick succession, and they are very hard to dodge and also kill all the bats. Eventually, once you get that defeated, and if you survive, you get thrown into a massive floating section where you have to dodge and attack a bunch of little mosquito things, or crabs or whatever these are supposed to be. This is where you'll do the most damage to the character himself. After that, the big man will drop down on the stage and you'll have to fight him, similar to a mini-boss. This is where I would recommend spawning the bats if you have that equipped, because it will rarely hit him before that. After that, you have to dodge his attacks and eventually you'll win. After describing it, I'm sure it doesn't sound that bad, but the first section where you only have a couple of seconds to hit the eyeball is very hard, and his laser attacks make them even more difficult. When he's in his final form, he also does massive damage, so oftentimes you'll take damage from the lasers, which leads to his normal attacks that hurt tremendously. After defeating him, you get a quick cutscene that sets up for a sequel game, which is not on the Switch and I'll not be talking about today. I wish it did give you a little bit more extra for a reward of finishing it, like a brand new weapon to try the game out again with, but it's still satisfying enough to just beat the game. Something I love about this game is that I can play the same encounters, the same bosses, the same general gameplay, and I can experience it in many different ways each time. Between the 5 weapons, 10 plus minor weapons, and hundreds of upgrades, it'd be very rare for me to have a playthrough where I feel like I've played it before. Every time you play it, it feels different. It feels like a new experience. That's one of the reasons I love this game so much. I don't love a lot of single player games or I'm just not interested in them because I'll play them once and probably never again, because while that one time was very good, there's very little that changes every time you play. You watch the same cutscenes and the same long hallways and the same fights and things like that. But in this game, you can play it so many different ways and it almost feels like a different game every time. This is particularly true with the 5 different weapons. It's a very different play style with each one. The best part of the game is, one of the best parts of the game as well, is the price of it. I don't remember how much I bought it for off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was $5 or less. For a game that is so in-depth and so much fun, being only $5, now I do have some minor issues with the game, and I'll talk about that now. Obviously, I wish I had another weapon, like maybe a crossbow or a warhammer or swashbuckling swords, but the ones we do have are still very good. The other thing is that there are a couple of bugs. The first is an intentional one, if you want to call it that, where if you quit out of the game after dying and reload your game, you can go back into the same encounter as if nothing happened. It's basically a redo on that level, and I think you have a little bit less health than last time, but it is worth mentioning. I also wish you had a revive button. That would be very nice if you had enough coins or purple orbs or something like that. Throughout your entire run, you have 1 life, and if you don't finish the game, you have to start the entire game over. Obviously, you don't lose your weapons and all that stuff, but you get what I mean. There's also a bug sometimes where you can just take continuous damage after getting hit by nothing, and I'm not sure why this happens, but it is quite rare. You can't do nothing about it, especially without a revive button. It's kind of annoying. The other one that I found, under specific circumstances of which I don't understand, you can gain the ability to fly permanently, similar to the goopy sections that I mentioned before. I have no idea why this happens, but if it ever does, combining this with a good upgrade pool allows you to beat the entire game very easily and makes you very powerful. I think there is a specific ability that can be gained throughout one of the chance time levels, but they're all randomized and it's pretty rare that you would grab that ability. The only other thing to mention is that if you ended your last session, as in you turned off the game and did something else and came back later, if you ended that last session in the hub world, pressing start on the main menu will just load you straight into the first biome and give you a couple of upgrades already. This has happened to me before and I've become extremely powerful after like the second of 7 biomes or something. I've only beaten the final boss like 3 times and one of these was with that ability. You can't choose what you get, however. It just sticks you on a random set of powers, but you will keep the weapon that you last used. I want to quickly touch on the family-friendly aspect of this game. This game is rated in for mature, but I think there's a very large asterisk on that, in my opinion. For one, there's no swearing. In fact, there's very little voice lines at all. There's no inappropriately dressed characters, and doesn't even hint towards anything like that. All it comes down to, I guess, is some scary imagery and some blood. After attacking the characters, these monsters will explode with a minor bit of blood, and then it'll disappear after a couple seconds. There's only like 2 times in the entire game where you have the option to kill a random dude in these star things, and even then it's extremely rare that you not only have to land on that space, get a room with those characters in it, and choose the answer that will kill them. For all those things to line up, it's not impossible, but definitely rare. There is a little more blood in the cutscenes, but there's like 2 in the whole game after you actually start it, and then you can also just skip them. The only other thing that could be part of this is crazy looking monsters and the subject matter. I guess a dude going on a rampage, killing demonic monsters and fighting the king of demons or whatever, you could call a bit much for a kid. But I think mature is a little overboard, especially because you're the hero in this scenario. I would really just say this one is up to you. There's really not much in this game where I'd be like, whoa, that is way too far. Quickly, I wanted to say that I played this game on Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch 1 before the 2 came out, and I had very little performance issues. The only time that I had any sort of trouble was with these giant floating eyeball clouds, because when you pair an ability that explodes 3 bullets in every direction when an enemy dies, and these enemies that can split up after death, and numbers appearing on screen whenever you do this, it caused a little bit of slowdown. But I've only ever had it closed because it was overloaded one time, and that was on the Switch 1. Otherwise, I have 0 frame rate drops from what I can tell. I'm not an expert at this, so there could be other points, but I've not seen any other issues than that. It's available on Switch 1, Switch 2, and PC. I don't know why it's not on Xbox or PlayStation, but it is what it is. Like I said before, for $5 or less, this is an absolute steal and something you should definitely pick up. So what do you think? Have you ever played this game? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.